Okay, so I summed up the income and I did that sum comma detail for you to show you the household income numbers. Some of those looked a little bit suspicious to me. I saw some very high earners, very high income households. Turns out that the household earnings variable here, this one that we use to create household income, there's a few suspiciously high earners there. I think that's because of the way Stats South Africa imputed for some earners if they refuse to give any information. That looks not good to me, but in the context of this analysis, it won't matter much, if at all. If you're doing inequality analysis, it would matter a huge amount. The fact that there's some very, very large earners that look wrong would matter. In our case, it matters less, and so you should just see that as another example of where one needs to be careful of household survey data. I had already looked at the data, but I hadn't figured that out myself. So just take it as a warning that using household survey data, you need to spend some time understanding it, otherwise you can get things wrong. Now, this count shows us how many households are reporting zero, how many individuals are in households with zero income. There's not many. Out of 71,934 reported no income for the month. That might be possible, but it also might be that households are underreporting, or they don't have, they're afraid to tell Stats South Africa enumerators their income. And so the quick fix that I'm going to do, I'm going to assume that these households don't have any, it's not that they have zero, but I will use their expenditure amount for the month as their income. And if you're a serious economist, you would tell me that there's many reasons why that's wrong. But in this case, I think it's a quick fix, and it's not a terrible one. So here's the expenditure variable. This is the categories that people are reporting. Some people report none. Some households report between 1 and 199 Rand per month. And then the highest category is 10,000 Rand or more per expenditure. So what I'm going to do is replace your income value with your expenditure value if your expenditure value is greater than income. So first of all, I need to calculate household expenditure. I've got to turn these brackets into actual amounts. So what I do is put you in the middle. If you say you earn between, your household income is between 1 and 199, I'm going to put you at 100 Rand. Just a simple midpoint imputation. And for the people up at the top who report 10,000, I'm going to give them 15,000. Sorry, if people report more than 10,000, I'm going to give them 15,000. Okay, so I've done that. And now I'm going to generate a new variable, household income with expenditure. And that's going to be equal to household income, but it's going to replace this value with the household expenditure if indeed your expenditure is bigger than your income that you reported. Okay, and so 14,000 changes were made, and so that's approximately 20% of the sample. Okay, so that's quite a lot. There's quite a lot of people, just 21% of the sample, who do have income less than expenditure. So that means that there might be some problems, or it might mean that households didn't get any income this month, but they saved some from the last month, or they actually went into debt, they borrowed money to do their spending. We don't know that. So one thing we can just check, how many people have either this income or expenditure equals to 0, and now we've got many fewer. So instead of a few thousand, there's only 146 individuals who live in households that reported no income and no expenditure. So in that case, there might be very, very poor households, and that's possible. So we're just going to leave those now as is. Now, households are of different sizes. So far, we've only got household income, and we've adjusted that using expenditure where household expenditure was bigger than household income. What we want to do is calculate a measure of individual income adjusted for household size. If your household has one person and you have 5,000 Rand in total of household income, and I have 5,000 Rand in total household income, and it's just me living in my household, I'm a lot better off than you in your much larger household. So what we want to do, first of all, is count the number of people in each household to create a household size variable. And again, you'll see we're using our friend eGen with by. this time with count, counts the number of non-missing person numbers, and it's just a way of getting the household size. So we do that. Sorry, I've got the wrong person number here. It's capital ANR, I'm sorry. Let me redo that. There we go. And I can just tab household size and show you what that looks like. Okay, there's some very big households. Somebody's got 22, but there's also lots of households of a variety of different sizes. And now what we want to do is calculate income or expenditure, where we have used expenditure instead of income, per capita. That's what this PC means here. We're dividing the household income by the household size. Okay. So now we have an indication of household welfare in for each of the members. We're counting that as their per capita household income, or using expenditure where expenditure is bigger than income. From the rest of the presentation, I'm just going to talk about household income. What we want to do now is divide people into deciles. We want to know which people are in the poorest 10% of the population, the next poorest 10%, the next poorest 10%, up to the richest 10%. And we use this xtile command. We're creating a new variable called household decile, and that is going to be based on this household income per capita. We're including 10, so it's deciles. It's not, say, for example, the top 50% or the bottom 50%. It's going to be in deciles, and we're going to use the person weight variable to weight the data. So we can calculate that, and then we can find out what this variable looks like. And we can see now for 71,000 people, some of them are in the lowest decile, some of them are in the highest, and we can now use that variable to think about how different people or households in different deciles have access to different kinds of income. Remember, that's what we are working on to get that one graph that I mentioned at the beginning. So what we're going to do now is try and figure out the types of households, who's employed, who's not. So here we're calculating the number of household employed. Here we're calculating the number of formal employed. Here we're counting the number of any formal employed. And here we're counting the number of the informal employed in the household. Again, always using egen with total and by counting within UQNR the household ID. Okay, so we've done that. And now I'm creating a categorical variable that describes what kind of household you live in. And there's 7 possibilities. Income category equals to 1 if you have grants and you have no employed people. Category 2 is if you have formal employed people in your household. Category 3 is if you don't have any formally employed people in your household. You also don't have grants, but you do have informally employed people. So the number of informally employed in your household is greater than 0. Category 4 is if you have household grants and you have informal people living in your household and you don't have any formal people living in your household. Category 5 is if you have no employed people, no grants, you do have remittances income and you don't have pension income. Category 6 is if you have no employed, no grants, and you do have pension income. And category 7 is if you have no household income whatsoever. For the eagle-eyed amongst you, you'll notice that some of these are not mutually exclusive. That's okay. The last replace that gets done is the final one. And in my case, I'm happy, for example, category 5, remittances equals to 0 is equal to 1, pension not equals to 1. In this case over here, in category 6, I will replace a household that has pension equals remittances equal to 1. Actually, no, I won't. That's an error. I think some of these categories are probably mutually exclusive. That's what I've planned. So sorry about that little error. Okay, so I can replace and figure out which people are in which category. And I can do a quick tab and figure out where are these people. So 56% of them, for example, are in households where there are formally employed people. 27% of these people are in households where there is only grant income. Now, there are a few missings. I didn't do this. Comma missing. There's some people actually, okay, nobody's equal to missing. That was my code from earlier before I fixed it. So finally, having realized that I fixed my code earlier before I did this webinar, I'm sorry, it's quite a while between the time of doing my Stata work and recording this webinar because I have other things to do, and so I didn't get around to doing that. I'm sorry, it's not perfect. We can now use this income category variable. We can first of all give it labels. 1, grants only. 2, at least 1 formal sector employee. 3, informal sector only. 4, informal plus grant. 5, remittances only. 6, private pension. 7, no income. So we can label that variable income category. And so what we can then use those labels for is to draw our bar graph. So this bar graph command says use person weight. Do this bar graph over 2 things. Income category, that's going to be our y-axis, and household decile is going to be our x-axis. These things here are a few stacking the bars on top of each other, using percentages, giving the graph a title, giving a note, and giving a y-axis title. So we can do that. And if you wait a minute, my Stata is going to take a little bit of time, but eventually we get this nice graph over here. And that's the one that I was hoping to get, that I showed you in the beginning. It shows us from richest to poorest decile what types of households, what types of individuals live in what types of households across these deciles. So you can see in decile 1, there's a huge chunk of people, 70%, who have grants only, and going up to almost 100% in the top decile have at least 1 formal sector employee. Again, for the sharp-eyed, you'll notice that when I started the recording, the PowerPoint presentation had a graph that looks a little bit different from this one. And that's because as I was doing the code with you now, I made realized that I'd made a few mistakes on the old graph. So this one is actually the correct one. The one that I had before looks a bit different and is incorrect. So again, I hope that shows you we can all make mistakes using Stata, and we just need to be careful. Ideally, have someone check your code or go through it fairly carefully.